Hello everyone, I am Demented Kirby, and welcome to my channel, the Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Stage is a series on this channel where games are played in the Commander Tavern for your entertainment. On this episode of The Stage, we have a 3DH match between an Anje Falkenrath Madness deck piloted by Gabriel, a Phenax God of Deception mill deck piloted by yours truly, and a Kykar Wind's Fury Spellslinger deck piloted by Saul. Gabriel keeps an opening hand of Obnixilis Reignited, Drownyard Temple, a Swamp, Hedonist Trove, Ash Barrens, Forgotten Cave, and Gaia Reach Sanitarium. I keep an opening hand of Sunken Hollow, Mnemonic Betrayal, Mox Diamond, Limdul's Vault, Lightning Greaves, Throne of the High City, and Ancient Tomb. Saul keeps an opening hand of Burnished Heart, Boros Signet, Thing in the Ice, Elsha of the Infinite, Jace's Sanctum, Exotic Orchard, and an Island. Gabriel wins the die roll and he starts us off. He draws a card and plays a swamp. He taps it to activate Ash Barrens, basic land cycling for a mountain, then passes. I draw a card, then play Ancient Tomb. I cast Mox Diamond, discarding a land. I take 2 damage from Ancient Tomb to cast Felwar Stone. I then tap out to cast Lightning Greaves. With Saul marbled at my turn 1, I ended and passed the turn to him. He draws a card, then plays an island and passes. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, to no one's surprise plays a mountain, which he taps to cycle Forgotten Cave, then passes. I untap, draw a card, then play a tapped Sunken Hollow. I receive 2 damage from Ancient Tomb and cast Whisper Soak Cloak. Then I pass. Saul untaps, draws a card, then plays Exotic Orchard. He then taps out to cast Boros Signet. He then passes. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, then plays Gaia Reach Sanitarium. He taps out to cast his commander. He activates her ability, discarding a card to draw a card. He then passes. I untap, then draw a card. I miss a land drop but draw Mana Vault, which I cast. I then cast Limdul's Vault and pass the turn to Saul while it resolves. Saul untaps, draws a card, then plays a Plains. He taps out to cast Burnished Heart and Mystic Remora. Frustrated that he didn't get it turn 1 after all the stuff I've played, he passes his turn. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, then plays a Swamp. He activates Anje, discarding Gorgon Recluse, which he then casts for its madness cost. He then passes. I untap, draw a card, then cast Mox Opal. I decided not to pay the Remora tax and Saul draws a card. I then cast my commander, who is not yet a creature. I then pass. Saul untaps, decides not to pay the cumulative upkeep, thus sacrificing Mr. Remora. He draws a card. Not drawing a land, he decides to activate Burnished Heart to ramp for 2 basic lands. He refrained from attacking with it first to not get any retribution. He looks for a mountain and an island, which enter the battlefield tapped. He then passes. Gabriel untaps, draws a card, then plays a swamp. He activates Anje, discarding Bloodhall Priest, which he casts for its madness cost. He then enters combat, attacking Saul for 2 combat damage. He then passes. I untap, pay 4 to untap Mana Vault, then draw a card. I cast Shield Sphere and then equip Lightning Greaves to it. I then pass. Saul untaps, then draws a card. He casts Firemind's Vessel. And casts Thing in the Ice afterwards. He then passes. Gabriel untaps, then draws a card. He casts Obnixilis Reignited. He activates his first ability, drawing a card and losing 1 life. He activates Anje. He then plays Cinder Barons and passes. At the beginning of his end step, I tap Shield Sphere, making Saul mill the top 6 cards of his library. I then start my turn, untapping my permanents and drawing a card. I play Prismatic Vista and then pass. Saul untaps, then draws a card. He casts an Izzet Locket. He then casts Jace's Sanctum. He then passes. Gabriel untaps, then draws a card. He plays a mountain, then casts Bone Miser. He activates Obnixilis' second ability to destroy Saul's only blocker. He then enters combat, attacking Saul for 6 combat damage. At the beginning of Gabriel's end step, I activate Shield Sphere to mill Gabriel for 6. I then begin my turn, untapping, then drawing a card. I play a Bloodstained Mire and then pass. Saul untaps, then draws a card. He casts Ignite the Future, triggering Jace's Sanctum and scrying 1. He whiffs, exiling 3 lands, much to his dismay. Since he can only play one of them, he plays Myriad Landscape. He then casts Ghostly Prison. He then passes. Gabriel untaps, then draws a card. He activates Obnixilis to draw 1 and lose 1 life. He casts Magus of the Wheel. He then casts Plague Crafter. In response to Plague Crafter entering the battlefield, I tap Shield Sphere to mill Gabriel for 6. Saul had no creatures, so he discards a card. Gabriel enters combat and swings at me for 8 damage. He then passes. I draw a card. I crack Bloodstained Mire and Prismatic Vista, losing a total of 2 life, to fetch for Underground Sea and a swamp. I then cast Mnemonic Betrayal. After exiling and looking through both graveyards, I tap out to cast Sanitarium Skeleton and Meteor Golem from Gabriel's exiled graveyard. I target his Obnixilis with the Golem. I then equip Lightning Greaves to it. I then pass. Saul untaps, then draws a card. He casts Nif Mizzet Parun. He then passes. At the end of Saul's turn, Gabriel activates Anje, discarding Big Game Hunter. which triggers Bone Miser, creating him a 2/2 zombie token. Then he casts Big Game Hunter for its madness cost, targeting Niv Mizzet when entering the battlefield. In response, Saul casts Source to Plowshares, targeting Bone Miser, triggering Jace's Sanctum and Niv Mizzet. He scries one first, then draws a card. Everything on the stack resolves, so Gabriel gains 4 life, Bone Miser is exiled, and Niv Mizzet is destroyed, but not before hitting Gabriel for 1 damage. Gabriel untaps, then draws a card. Saul cracks Myriad Landscape for 2 planes at the beginning of Gabriel's main phase. Gabriel plays an Exotic Orchard. Gabriel then casts Chaos Warp, targeting Saul's Ghostly Prison. Unfortunately, a non-permanent is revealed from the top of his library. He then activates Gaia Reach Sanitarium. Everybody loots 1. He then enters combat, dealing 10 damage to Saul. At the end of his turn, I tap Meteor Golem to mill Gabriel for 3. I then start my turn. I untap, but don't pay to untap Mana Vault, taking 1 damage. I then draw. I receive 2 damage from Ancient Tomb and cast Morphling. I then equip Lightning Greaves to it. I then pass. Saul untaps, then draws a card. He plays a Sulphur Falls. He casts Ignite the Future for its flashback cost, triggering Jace's Sanctum, so he scries 1. Ignite the Future then resolves, and he exiles the top 3 cards of his deck. Since Saul can't cast Cyclonic Rift for its overload cost and is looking for something to bounce, I strike a deal with him so that he bounces my Mana Vault, and then I'll owe him a favor. And he accepts the deal. He then casts Bloodthirsty Blade. He then equips it to Bloodhall Priest. He then passes. Since he couldn't cast the Pact of Negation exile with Ignite the Future, it remains exiled at the end of his turn. Gabriel untaps, then draws a card. He plays a mountain. He then casts Eon Engine, to which everybody at the table starts laughing. We're not playing Uno, Gabriel. He then enters combat, sending 6 total damage to Saul and a 6/4 Bloodhall Priest to me. I block with Meteor Golem and Sanitarium Skeleton. In response to the damage step, I tap them to mill Gabriel for 4. All 3 creatures die from combat damage. Gabriel then passes. At the end of his turn, I activate Morphling, giving it -3/3 in order to mill Gabriel for 6 more. I then start my turn, untapping and drawing a card. I play a tapped Watery Grave. I cast Mana Vault again. I then pass. Saul untaps, then draws a card. He sacrifices Izzet Locket to draw 2 cards. He finally casts his commander. He then plays Evolving Wilds. He cracks it to look for an island. He then casts Gutter Snipe. He equips Bloodthirsty Blade to Gabriel's Playcrafter and passes. Gabriel untaps, then draws a card. He plays a mountain. He casts Beacon of Unrest, targeting Saul's Niv-Mizzet. He activates Anje, triggering Niv-Mizzet, dealing 1 damage to Saul. He pays 6 life to cast Kirik, Son of Yawgmoth. He enters combat, sending Plague Crafter my way and the zombie to Saul. Saul blocks with Kykar and I block with Morphling. In response, I activate it so that it gains enough toughness not to die. The zombie token dies. At the end of Gabriel's turn, I activate Morphling enough to mill Gabriel for 7. I then pay 2 life to cast Vampiric Tutor, triggering Niv-Mizzet so Gabriel pings Saul for 1 more. I then start my turn, untapping and drawing a card. I cast Eater of the Dead. I cast it with Saul tapped out, and unfortunately he had no free counterspells in hand. Thankfully, this is what I was waiting for. So it resolves, and I then equip it with Lightning Greaves after it enters the battlefield. This is basically a win, since I can tap it to mill each player for 4. Then I can exile a creature from a graveyard to untap it. I was able to do this to mill Gabriel's entire graveyard. I then did the same to Saul. Although Saul's deck was light on creatures, I was able to just exile creatures from Gabriel's graveyard to continue milling Saul. I then pass my turn. Saul can't draw from his library and loses. Then Gabriel can't draw from his library and loses. Although Saul's deck was a bit clunky this game, he was able to get a solid mana base and was able to cast some spells. Unfortunately, he whiffed twice with Ignite the Future. On top of that, Gabriel was using all his resources to deny Saul of any creatures since he couldn't target any of mine since I had Lightning Greaves and Willspersoul Cloak. But Gabriel underestimated my deck and not only put pressure on Saul with combat damage. Even though I have a mill deck, it can be quite formidable. I was able to finally draw into a tutor to get Eater of the Dead, which is basically a game over with Phenax in play. I had an amazing start, but was only drawing into mana rocks and lands with the occasional spell after that. Fortunately, I was able to get the tutor when I did because Gabriel had gotten Kirik that turn, plus he stole Saul's Niv-Mizzet while having Magus of the Wheel in play. After that epic turn, with maybe one more turn, he could have very easily taken hold of the game and won. Overall, we had a blast playing this game, and I hope you had fun watching it. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Stage on the Commander Tavern. I am Demented Kirby, and happy playing.